You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Mark Reed and Ted Durden, only on LA Talk Radio.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of The Voice of Reason. My name is Ted Durden. I'm a Southern Democrat.
And my name is Mark Reed, a West Coast Republican.
And together we are The Voice of Reason. Now, for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, this is a politically motivated podcast where civil discord is the order of the day. Well, Mark and I find that we have more things that unite us than there are things that divide us. And as I always do, after that opening, I toss the ball to my man, Mark.
Well, you know, Ted, it's quite interesting. The whole premise of the show has really been an exercise to show all of you out there that getting hung up in the tribalism of politics, of Republican and Democrat, is the most destructive actions that we can engage in.
It really truly is.
And it's really not really, it's discovering what we have in common. Mm-hmm. Because realistically, you know, you get married and let me tell you, you find out all the things you don't have in common with your wife after 10 years, right?
Right.
So, you know, but the marriage evolves and you start finding out what you really do have in common. Mm-hmm. And you start getting along. And I have found that out through my entire life, that when I engage in political conversations with anybody, mm-hmm. I don't start it off anymore with you Democrat or you Republican, or, you know, because one of my consultants has advised me, and I just did this to a Democrat, said, I am a progressive Democrat. I said, why do you pigeonhole yourself? He goes, what do you mean? I said, well, depending on the subject matter, you know, you're a conservative, you are a liberal, you are a progressive. It depends on the subject matter. She goes, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm very conservative with my money, right? And I said, so are you. You don't just give it away, do you?
Right,
she
exactly.
goes, no. And I said, well, when I'm serving myself a bowl of ice cream, I'm extremely liberal.
Exactly.
So depending upon subject matter, and look at the definitions of conservative, you know, it's traditional. Mm-hmm. It's not getting outside of that box. You look at liberal, you know, they go a little bit outside of the box trying to find solutions.
Correct.
You get into the progressive and they get rid of the complete, you know, traditional aspects. They want to look way outside of the box and really go for it, right?
A little bit too extreme for my taste.
A little too extreme for my taste, too. And that's where you get into the ultra-conservative, where it's just really a kind of a religious right.
Almost draconian.
You know, too far to the right.
Right.
And that's why I've always liked Roosevelt's conversation about politics. And this is where I come from. I live personally a conservative life. Mm-hmm. You know, I was raised a Catholic. I've kind of recovered from that a little bit. I have a lot of different, you know, viewpoints, and I understand everybody's viewpoints from it. So I'm not a totalitarian on religious viewpoints, hardliner on that.
Right.
But I do live a conservative life. You know, I was raised that way. My parents were that way. You know, I met my wife at 11. You know, I gave her a promise ring at 16 years old. We married at 21. You know, we've survived 40. She's survived 41 years of marriage with me, right? It's been a breeze for me and an enjoyable time.
Right.
And we have 10 grandchildren and 3 adult children. Have I been a perfect person? No. Has she been a perfect person? No.
Right.
But she was a Democrat, so I give her a lot of leeway.
And that's awfully kind of you. It's awfully nice of you.
Well, she looks at me as a Republican, so she's giving me a lot of leeway.
Loved you in spite of that, right?
But the issue is that when you start talking with real, how would you say, humanity behind you, you do find out, yes, we have a lot of things in common. There's a tremendous amount of things in common.
Yeah.
And you sit down and at that point, and I had the conversation with you about this, together, okay, we are the voice of reason. Individually, we may be extreme.
Well, see, right? It's kind of like you said. Okay, I'm a Southern Baptist by nature. And anybody knows anybody about Southern Baptists, we have a tendency to be conservative. We just do. And I'm cut from that cloth. I am. I had the honor and the privilege where Mark invited me to a town hall meeting with the Republican Party. I was a guest there. And I was very well received. And I think we're all guilty of the same thing. And that is, as soon as we hear someone's political affiliation, then we're stereotyped. We believe this is how, if you're a Democrat, you must think this way.
We kind of profile them.
Yeah. And the same thing with Republicans. You're a Republican, no, you got to be this, you have to hate immigrants, you have to, but no. during the course of that town hall meeting, after hearing me speak, and again, when you strip all of that away, we all want the same thing. We all want the same thing.
We want to
really
be happy.
Truly. Yeah,
we want to
really.
be happy.
And the bottom line is, we all want to find a solution to the problem. It's like I've said before, a solution has no political affiliation. It just doesn't. Neither does a problem. A problem, if it's my problem, chances are it's going to be your problem too. And we just want a solution.
A lot of the subject matter, Ted, that we have discussed on the show has been a cross-party line.
Yes, absolutely.
When you talk about the health issues of the Aliso Canyon, we talk about the public school curriculum.
The curriculum, right? Yes.
We talked with Robert F. Kennedy about the vaccinations, and he gave an unbelievable short history about how he was fighting with the Intel community, and that's and you think about that and you go, wow, that was interesting. But most kids today don't know these things.
Have no idea.
It's not being taught.
No.
I wanted to, and I really, that night when you gave me a lot of compliments that night, on the show when we discussed the time that you went to the Republican Party, and I really appreciated that.
Oh, yeah.
The night that I gave you my conspiring spy Republican elephant for you to bring home.
I had to run it through an MRI scanner just to make sure.
Check it out to make sure it bugs in there.
That's it. That's right.
Well, it has some voodoo with it. It's going to turn you into a Republican. Actually, I think you're more Republican than you know.
Shut up.
I really do.
Shut up.
I think your grandfather is rolling around in his grave of the leadership of the Democrat Party. I know he can't die again. You were voting for a Republican, so. But I think that a lot of the old school Democrats are really having a hard time with the leadership.
I think so, to a certain extent.
They are.
Yeah.
They really are. And we're going to get into a couple of the national things. But I wanted to get into this little segment, kind of try it out. We have discussed this topic once before. We've touched on it. The whole concept of minimum wage.
Right.
Okay, and I believe that it's so critical that we should revisit it once again.
Okay.
Because it's an apparent altruistic concept, right? And, Ted, if minimum wage was raised to, let's say, $25 an hour, okay, effective January 1st, 2020, realistically, what effect do you think it would have on high school graduation rates, and what effect, if any, would it have on illegal border crossings? Okay, considering that the number one stimulus for illegal border crossings is the economy. We know it's the economy.
Absolutely.
Okay. What do you think it would have? What effects?
I can give you a short answer.
Okay.
Okay. School attendance will drop. Graduation rates will drop. The number of illegal immigrants clamoring across the border would probably increase 100-fold. Because when you think about someone making $25 an hour with little to no education,
right?
You're going to have kids out there saying, well, what the hell do I need to go to school for? I can drop out. I can go work at McDonald's, $25 an hour. I can be over here washing cars, $25 an hour. I can be over here busting tables, $25 an hour. Okay, serving food, $25 an hour, plus tips.
Yeah, you can go to work at Ralph's and go collect cards.
You get an illegal immigrant that can slide in, go someplace, work under the table or top the table, $25 an hour with fake IDs, fake Social Security numbers. Yeah, you would see the number of immigrants, illegal immigrants, clamoring to get across the border 100-fold. You can look at the graduation rate, and I'm talking about from high schools and especially on the inner cities, fall dramatically. And here's what you have to understand. Here's the trickle effect, trickle-down effect. Trickle-down effect is this.
Right. The unintended consequences.
Right, yeah. And here's what it is. First off, if school attendance drops, the amount of money that the federal government gives to the states for schools drops because it is based on the number of students that attend per capita.
Yep.
So they get so much per head. Now, granted, California has, I think, one of the lowest rates that we get, but that would drop dramatically. The other unintended consequence, as we talked about before, it is the minorities that are going to get hit the hardest. Those that get to $25 an hour, they're going to be as happy as a pig in slop. But trust me, the inner city youth, they're going to get kicked to the curb. They're not going to get that $25 an hour. It's like I've said, if you have someone, and again, this isn't so much racism or elitism. we have a tendency to hire those people that look most like us. So if you have a business that is owned by Caucasian or owned by Hispanic, they're going to hire Hispanics or they're going to hire Caucasians. They're going to hire those people that look the most like them. So the ones that will get hurt the most is going to be the inner cities. Even if you look at it from an economic perspective, when you look at some place like a Home Depot, and, going into an inner city, we're not going to pay anybody in the inner city $25 an hour to cut wood, to stock shelves. And so now you're potentially looking at the loss of businesses in the inner city, where they'll go more out to the suburbs.
Yeah.
So this whole minimum wage thing, they really need to leave that alone. The $25, the $15, $16 an hour, small businesses will not be able to sustain that. That's already been shown up north already. There's been a few test cases, and they ended up going out of business because they could not sustain that.
That dives into the next one. And because this is a political show and we have a Southern Democrat and a West Coast Republican, I'm going to kind of throw this out there, not to insult you, but it seems to me that the ones driving this push are the Democrats. Bernie Sanders.
No, they are.
It is the Democrat Party that is driving this what do you call that? The living wage. And it's never been intended to be a living wage. It's a minimum wage.
Right.
And that's to get people into the workforce. Now, the creation of this and the good intentions of them, and it is good intentions. I think they kind of are looking at it as good intentions, but they're not looking at the unintended consequences.
No, they're not.
And the major one that I'm looking at is the permanent underclass that is created, the ones that will never get the opportunity to be employed. Okay?
Absolutely. Right.
It can appear to be racism, because if you think it's the Democrats doing this, who is the major base of the Democrat Party?
The major base of the Democratic Party is and always has been black people, African Americans.
Right.
We have been the backbone of the Democratic Party for the last 100 years, since the day we got the right to vote. That's what we've done. That's who we've backed. And the living wage, the $25 an hour, the $15 an hour, whatever you want to call it, it's a good soundbite. It sounds good. It looks good. But when you look at the unintended consequences, when you dig further behind it, there's an old Southern phrase. It's like hiding the hand that throws the rock. You throw the rock and hide the hand. They're not looking at this down the road. All they're looking for is headlines, $25 an hour. That's all they're looking at. $15 an hour.
It's a wedge issue.
Yeah, but here's an interesting fact though, and you didn't hear a whole lot about this in the news. And this is about Bernie Sanders and his campaign. That when he was told that he was going to have to pay his campaign staffers $15 an hour, you know what his response was? Fine, I'll do that, but I have to lay some of y'all off.
Well, I actually read a report on that, and it was kind of misleading, Ted. And let me kind of lay it out. Okay, he was paying them a salary. Mm-hmm. And the salary was actually based on $15 an hour for a 40-hour week.
Okay.
The problem is they weren't working 40 hours. They were working 60, 70 hours.
Right.
And so they started complaining and saying, well, look, we want $15 an hour straight across the board. If we're on the clock for 12, 14 hours, we want $15 an hour. This isn't right anymore. And so he looked at it, and that's how the news got out. Because if you took a 14-hour day and it was $15 an hour flat for 8 hours, then all of a sudden it dropped down to $8 or $9 an hour,
right.
whatever it worked out
Right.
to. And then so Bernie said, well, okay, if that's what you want to do, then you're going to get cut. You're 40 hours and that's it. Okay. And actually we're going to have to lay some of you off. Okay. So it was an interesting spin on what was happening.
But
okay?
it still doesn't change the fact. So when he
it doesn't change it because I've worked for salary and
right.
You're required to work a little bit sometimes overtime, but I always got paid for it.
Right, and in this instance, they weren't getting paid.
They weren't getting paid. That was more of a criminal act than the salary and not getting paid $15 an hour for every hour they were at work.
And everybody knows, anybody that's in labor knows, once you get past the 8 hours, it's supposed to be time and a half.
Yep.
And once you get past
11,
it's double time. So if he had people doing that, so yeah, he was making out like a bandit with the way that he was working his campaign staff.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But again, when faced with having to live up to the rhetoric that he was espousing, what did he do? Sure, I'm gonna cut you, reduce it to 40, and lay some of y'all off. So to me, in that instance, and again, you're talking about a distinction without a difference. With the way that you describe it still comes down to it. He's a hypocrite. He's a hypocrite.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
he's a hypocrite.
Absolutely is.
And again, at the end of the day, it ain't like he can't afford it.
Well, it's kind of like the hypocrisy, okay, of Hillary Clinton and her foundation, and they come out, it's equal pay for equal work, but yet her women that worked for her foundation were being paid significantly less than the men.
Yes, they were.
So when you start diving into the weeds of the grass of these individuals, you see the hypocrisies constantly.
That was in the details. Yeah.
But this whole, the minimum wage, it appears that the higher the wage, the more potential workers are met with unemployment resistance and regulated to that underclass. And we've discussed the appearance of racism because it affects two major groups all the time.
Right.
And that is the Black community and the Hispanic community.
Right.
And under this administration, it's unbelievable how much employment. Now, there's still unemployment in certain areas because there's no opportunity there.
True.
And this administration, through opportunity zones and the redistribution of money going to there, he's addressing that. And this is why I believe the black voter approval is up to 35% now.
Well, and it's kind of like we talked about before when you talk about this particular administration. Blacks are the direct benefiters of his immigration policy with the raids, because when he roots out illegal immigrants, 9 times out of 10, those people that take their place are blacks. And I illustrated that happened at a plant in Memphis. When they had a raid, this guy had been trying to get a job there for years. He couldn't get one, but he kept seeing all these Hispanics being hired. And once all the illegal immigrants were taken out, all of the majority of which were Hispanic, blacks were hired. And it's like we talked about. When illegal immigrants come in, they're the ones that take the lower paying jobs that most of the time blacks would get. So we get supplanted. And that's why Hispanics have, quote unquote, become right now the darlings of the Democratic Party, where they're taking the blacks for granted because blacks have always voted for them. And they said, okay, well, let's now pursue the Hispanic vote because their population has been going in leaps and bounds. So again, I think that culturally, blacks need to take a hard look at that. And if you're going to vote Democratic, you need to demand more. You need to expect more. But I just don't see that happening. I just don't.
Remember, it's never voting Democratic. It's Democrat. It's the Democrat Party.
Democratic.
Democrat.
That's what I say.
We'll fight over that.
We can. You lose.
I don't know. We're living in a democracy here. I have one more piece on this. However, it's time for an ad, and Ted is going to read an ad this evening. And in the future, it will be a recorded ad. So bear with us, and this is a sponsor that we have, and welcome to the board.
My name is Ted Durden, and I've been in workers' compensation for 20 years. And you can trust me when I tell you that there is no better law firm in Southern California to deal with when it comes to workers' compensation and employment-related injuries than churchandlaw.com. The reason why I am so confident about churchandlaw.com is because when I'm not doing the Voice of Reason podcast, I am working for them. churchandlaw.com at 818-230-3110. So if you ever need advice about workers' compensation related injuries, please call 818-230-3110 at churchandlaw.com and tell them that I, Ted Durden, referred you.
There we go. That helps pay our bills for this show, and so do you. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to give us a call in. The phone number should be right on top of the banner of the show.
Right.
It's podcast there. Now, You know, I've run for Congress. I'm very in depth in Congress's outlook on things, and I'm up against a congressman that's been there for 22 years. He supports the minimum wage aspect as well.
Of course he does.
He's come out constantly for it. He's pretty much destroyed the economy in the West San Fernando Valley. It used to be a heavy research and development manufacturing economy in the San Fernando Valley, and he's destroyed it in the 22 years he's been there. So let's assume that our Congress has a responsibility to legislate laws that should benefit our nation. Why would it legislate laws that appear to damage our nation? And what the heck is going on with them? Seriously, when you look at them with the minimum wage, you're legislating this out, and they know statistically through history, it has damaged the economy and it's damaged the workforce. We had one of the lowest workforce participation rates under Barack Obama. The highest participation rate was just over 67%. Right now it's approximately at 64%. It's pretty good. We can still get it up higher, wouldn't you say, if we lowered the minimum wage? Gave more opportunity for people to join the workforce, to be trained by companies. That's the key aspect.
And I agree with you 100%. And again, you know, the question to ask is why would they engage in it? And it's like I said, it's political fodder. That's all it is. It looks good and it sounds good. You know, it's a bunch of saber rattling. Look at what I'm doing for you. Don't look over here though. Don't look over here though. Don't look what's going to happen down the road though. Just look at this right here. This is all nice and pretty and flowery. Sky's blue, sun shining. But, you know, don't look at about 6 months from now when your ass going to be at home out of work.
Well, do you think it's really just, it's one of the major wedge issues, kind of like the gun issue and the immigration issue. It's just a major wedge issue that they use to create confusion and working off of the fears of the workforce in America, just to satisfy their desire for power. Power, political power. They don't care. They're elitist in the government right at this point. And don't get me wrong, Ted. There's a lot of very good congressmen and senators.
Oh, sure.
Okay, in the Mid-Beltway, where they were criticized as being the gun-toting, Bible-carrying, people. They're very good people. But I've always learned this working in committees, okay? 10% of the committee kind of does all the work.
Right, yeah.
Right? So the 10% of what's happening in these elected officials are very corrupt. And all they're interested in is power.
And the retaining of the power.
Retention of the power.
Right.
You know, I get a major kick, and I just had a real good conversation with an individual, because everybody talks about the Constitution. Oh, it's Constitution. Well, we have our Constitution. We took our oath and all that. Wait a minute. Do you know the most important document is our Declaration of Independence?
Other than the Bill of Rights?
Well, the Bill of Rights is the first 10 amendments of the Constitution. But our Declaration of Independence is what's established our individual God-given rights and our sovereignty over any other nation. The recognition of our own freedom from any other nation. This is what the Declaration of Independence is what created this nation.
Right.
Our Constitution was designed to protect our individual rights.
Right.
Okay. So yes, the Bill of Rights is very important and enumerates the first 10.
Right.
That's the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments. They've been changed and everything else. But when you listen to these elected officials who have broken every amendment of the Constitution and all of the legislation that they have proposed and or passed, they're destroying our Declaration of Independence. We're becoming dependent on other nations. We're becoming dependent on the government. We're becoming the states. When Ronald Reagan ran for the governor of California, he made the statement, for every ounce of assistance that you get from the federal government, you give up a pound of freedom.
No, and you're right, and you make an interesting point. Because I believe it was Pete Wilson when he was in office.
Right.
And I remember him proposing something, and it got killed. And I'll admit, it was the Democrats that killed it, and I was furious about it. He had put in place, or he had submitted legislation for work welfare. And what that was is for every dollar you earned or that you were given through, what is it? Welfare, but there's another phrase you use now. No. But we'll just call it welfare.
Which is welfare.
Okay.
Well, entitlement programs,
Right,
welfare programs.
That you had to work so many hours in order to get that money. And what he also proposed for those who were constantly having children, without self-regulating, as it were, the amount of money that you would receive per child would become reduced. So that you weren't going to be rewarded at the same rate if all you're doing is sitting around having babies.
Right.
That got killed. I was furious about that because he had put forth a plan and a map to get people off of welfare, to have them become contributing members of our society. And it died. Now, the problem that we have, and you talk about our reliance on foreign support, and let's keep it real. China owns our ass. We're in so much debt to China. It's not even funny.
They're small. They're less than a third of the debt.
Yeah, but again, if
but
they call,
but the manufacturing aspect.
But if they called that debt, we couldn't pay it back. That's what I mean. We couldn't afford to pay that back.
They don't have a bill collector big enough to come get it.
But you know what I'm saying.
I'm just messing with you.
my point is this. Entitlement programs,
right?
They eat up too much of our economy. They eat up too much of it. Now, I know different administrations have proposed different solutions, and they haven't gone very far. I know they've been talking about the privatization of Medicare. There was even talking about the privatization of welfare, doing something to help cut the cost because it takes up the lion's share of any city's budget is entitlement programs or any state's budget.
Well, let me ask you this, Ted,
sure.
Not to cut you off on that one, but this current administration, starting, I believe it's in June of next year, on the SNAP program.
I read about that.
You read
go
about
ahead.
that
Go
one,
ahead.
okay? Where it's going to remove, the SNAP assistance, only $200 a month.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It's not a lot of money, but it's still $200 a month from
Mm-hmm.
people of 18 years old, I think, to 40 years old, able-bodied men
Mm-hmm.
and women,
Mm-hmm.
right, that do not have any dependents. They're just individuals.
Right.
You and I both know if I was an independent, youngster like that again, I'd go out and work my tail off and I'd buy everything I wanted.
Right.
That was my personal integrity. So the Democrats at this point, right, are throwing it up and they're always taking away food from children. He's taking away necessary nutrition from people. It's like, well, wait a minute. These are able-bodied 18-year-olds, young male, young female adults
Mm-hmm.
that can actually go to work, okay? But why is the Democrat sitting there throwing up such a big fuss about this? Is it because of who's proposing it?
It could be that it just looks good. It's almost like today. Nancy Pelosi, when she announced about the articles of impeachment, referring it to the judiciary, she was asked by a Fox reporter, does she hate Trump? Now, she took offense at that, and that's fine.
She blew up.
Yeah, and I know. She took offense at it, and that's fine. But it's like, I talked about it. Okay, stop hating the man. Stop hating the man. And, ever since Trump has won the election, it's almost like when Bill Clinton won back-to-back, he's just sticking in the Democrats' craw. Okay, well, he won the election. Okay, stop making this so personal. Stop making this so political. Stop doing that. If there's an issue with his policy, go after the policy. Stop going after the man. And I think that's the mistake that they keep making over and over and over again, where they lose credibility.
Well, I'm going to go out on a little bit of a limb
Mm-hmm.
here about you brought up the impeachment process, okay? And I'm going to go a little bit out on the limb here. All they've wanted to do, this whole process, is bloody and muddy this president, to create him to be an entity that's not worth reelecting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're going to bring it to a floor vote for impeachment. I think they're going to end up going for censure, and that's it, because they don't want to take their top runners running for the presidency out of the campaigning process. Think about it. If they lose the vote, they're going to lose 31 congressmen who are in Trump-won territories. Nancy Pelosi will lose the House. Nancy Pelosi will lose her chairmanship, her Speaker of the House. Okay. It is not in her benefit. If you think about the whole purpose of the impeachment process is just a bloody and muddy, just beat him up so bad every day of the week, control and dominate the press with beating this guy up, just beating him up as much as you can. And then you pull back and you say, you know what? We have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt, unrefutable evidence, that he has bribed, he has conspired, he has manipulated, he's done. Now it's up to the American people. We have given you all the evidence you need for November.
I'm telling you, and
we're just going to censure him now.
I don't think that's going to happen. Now, you make one very good point, because those Democrats that are in Trump territory, as it were, some of them, not all of them, have come out and said that if the articles of impeachment include obstruction of justice and make reference to the Mueller report, they won't vote for it. They've made that clear.
Right.
So that does prove problematic for the House. It does prove problematic. I believe they're going to bring it to a vote, because I'm telling you right now, if they don't, you will see such a revolt amongst the Democratic constituencies that the Democrats will absolutely lose the House, because they have pushed this issue so hard. And I agree with what Turley said. I agree with what he said.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, in the sense that
level-headed guy, and he
said
wasn't a Trump supporter. He doesn't like Trump.
You're moving too fast.
Yep.
Yeah, you're moving too fast. You know, granted, Trump has done what Trump has always done. When there's an issue, he takes a legal route every time, and that is exactly what he has done in this instance, to the point where he even has asked the Supreme Court to block the Democrats from getting his financial records. That's what he does.
Yep.
So they should have known that was coming.
That's his legal right to do too.
And I agree with Turley. If you're going to do this, do it right. Yeah, What's the rush? If it has to play out within the judicial branch, then let it play out in the judicial branch. But doing this and going about it the way that you did, I'm going to take away all the side comments. I don't agree with the Republicans are saying, as far as it's a sham, the secret hearings, the depots. The same thing happened with Clinton. I don't care about all of that. But they're not going about this the right way. They're not. They're just not. I believe right now they have no choice but to call a vote. Because right now they're in a no-win situation. Because
I agree with that
because if they don't hold the vote, you're going to get a revolt. If they hold the vote, and if they include
get a revolt, because it's not going to go anywhere in the Senate.
No, it's not. No, it's not. it really and truly isn't. It is DOA. It is dead on arrival when it gets into the Senate. It just is. So.
It is, and it has nothing to do with the corruption of the Senate.
No.
And the other part of the reasons why I don't think it's going to go there, okay, they're going to do a censure, is because once it goes to the Senate, they're going to be able to call in Giuliani. They're going to be able to call in Bolton. They're going to be able to call in McVaney. They're going to be able to call in some of the Ukrainian officials as well.
Right.
They're going to be able to really do a hearing that I do not think will benefit the Democrats in any particular way. So there's a real calculated decision. Okay, and what we're watching right now, in my mind, you know, and thinking about it, really analyzing it, looking at, kind of like, how did you say, Tulane? What's the guy?
Oh, Turley.
Turley,
yeah.
The way Turley talked about it is that what our founding fathers warned this great nation about, and that is a politically driven impeachment.
Right.
Okay, in one of the podcasts we did, I said not one Republican voted for the impeachment inquiry. You said, no, 2 of them did. No, none of them did.
I
You
was
figured
wrong
that
on
one
that.
out.
Right.
You just didn't know at the moment that the only bipartisan vote was against it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? This is the most, Richard Nixon, even Bill Clinton's impeachment inquiry vote was unanimous. There was only a few.
Yeah, right.
Same thing with Richard Nixon. There was issues there that were dire that needed to be dealt with. And I didn't even agree, actually, with Bill Clinton's impeachment. I didn't agree with it. I understood it. I know the 11 felonies, he was convicted of 9.
Right.
But in this one here, when the one gal, Jackson Lee, I think, the congresswoman from Florida, she was holding up the 2 binders. Does this look like a wafer-thin impeachment? If you brought out Bill Clinton's impeachment papers,
oh my God,
it was a stack about 4 foot tall.
It was enormous.
Okay,
It was ginormous.
if you took out the stack of paperwork for Nixon's impeachment, it was huge, covered the whole table.
Absolutely.
Okay, those weren't wafer thin. There was actual issues that were threatening to the sovereignty of this nation, of the democracy.
Right.
Okay, this one here, 2 little binders, and it was all inferred, hearsay, secondhand, inferenced, no eyewitness, no direct witness, nothing.
No, because
it
right
was
now,
all garbage.
nobody.
That's why they don't want it to go to the Senate.
Nobody has
ones,
testified that he specifically said that. Nobody has.
Well, no, Sunderland.
No,
Sunderland said that he said that he did not want anything from Ukraine. There's no quid pro quo.
But what I'm saying is nobody has heard him specifically say, if they don't do this, hold the money back.
Or there was no directive either saying this is what you need to do. I want you to go to Ukraine. I want you to talk to them and say you can have this for that.
No,
exactly.
Because even Sondland, when he said it was his opinion and his impression that is what he wanted.
Right.
But nothing. And I can't remember who asked him, and he said no, he did not specifically say that. So there you go.
That was Jordan, I think, Congressman Jordan.
Could be.
That did. I like that guy. He always shows up. He doesn't have a suit jacket on ever, does he?
Yeah, but he's too loud.
He's a working boy.
He's worse than Bernie. He's worse than Bernie.
On that note, before we go on to other subjects, we're going to go ahead and pay our bills, and we're going to roll our ads. Hi, I want to welcome Rusty Levin and Harry Nabanian, both trial lawyers for workman comp cases. If you're injured on the job, don't hesitate. Contact an attorney. I did when I was wounded or injured on my job, and I thought I would trust my employer, and it didn't work out quite well. So I found Rusty Levin, handled my case like a professional, worked out way better than any other lawyer that I talked to would have worked out. So Rusty, tell us a little bit about your company of Levin and Nabanian Trial Lawyers.
So at our firm at Levin Albania Trial Lawyers, we handle all matters of workers' compensation, personal injury, and employment disputes, wrongful termination matters, and things like that. We were able to help Mr. Reed out with his workers' compensation case. Unfortunately, workers' compensation injury can be very stressful, intense situation. And at Levin Albanian, we try to get you the most benefit we can of the law, while also easing the stress and anxiety that comes along with that situation, and getting you back on your feet. My partner, Mr. Labandian, he handles the personal injury sides, and I'll let him take it from there.
And just like all injured employees out there, anybody else who gets injured as a result of somebody else's negligence has rights, and the rights that they need to protect immediately. And they should do that by calling Levin and Albanian Trial Lawyers and letting us help ease that tension off of you and get you the result you deserve, while also making sure that you get better in the progress. So we're here for you, folks.
Levin and Nabanian Trial Lawyers is the best company for you to get a hold of when you're injured or have a personal injury. So give them a call at
213-232-4848, 213-232-4848. Thank you.
And let them handle the stress for you while you recover at home. Thank you again. Bye-bye. welcome back to the Voice of Reason. We're engaged in a very good discussion, and Ted has a couple of very good topics that he's going to discuss here, and I'm gonna try to reply with some intelligence. All right, Ted, you're up to bat.
well, the first thing I want to talk about, and I called it months ago, when the Voice of Reason was at our first studio, and when Kamala Harris entered into the race, I predicted she was going to be lightning in the bottle. She wasn't going to last long. She was going to be a flash in the pan.
Right.
And she announced, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that she is officially dropping out of the presidential race. I'm not surprised. Her platform was built on sand. It was never steady.
Right.
I was never impressed with her with any interviews that I saw. I don't know what it was she was trying to accomplish when I saw the whole listening to rap music and twerking. She having to defend her blackness, which I didn't, which was crazy. The whole I smoke and I do inhale. When it was just ridiculous to me. I was never.
Did you think you were responding a little bit, Ted? I'm really against identity politics, heavily against identity politics, because as Adam Smith said, is when you favor one group over another, you actually hurt that group in the full cycle more than you ever helped them. So when she was defending her blackness, she was really going after the base, as we both agreed to. The base of the Democrat Party is the black community throughout the country. It's the black community. But they have to get 85% of the vote.
Yeah, but my point is, if let's say for the sake of argument, if I was in her shoes and I'm running for office, I'm not going to give that the dignity of a response to a question like that.
Right.
I'm not. And I was surprised and disappointed when she entertained it, and it went on for weeks.
Didn't she do that interview on the Howard Stern show?
It was Howard Stern. There was another black radio station, which the name escapes me now. But like I said, I'm not overly surprised, and I believe, in my opinion, Cory Booker is going to be the next one that's going to drop out.
Right.
I mean, his support has been dramatically waning. Well, I think he's going to be the next one that's going to be gone. So,
what do you think? Kamala Harris's indignified actions are very similar to the criticism that they have against the current president, current occupant of the White House. They say his actions are indignified because I've said it before as well. But when you get that, it's kind of like you're still expecting a little bit more of refinement.
Well,
it's like okay, when you were younger, you smoked a little weed. Yeah. You might have taken a couple of rainbows or black beauties or whatever, drank a little too much in college, and you kind of grew up. Right. And you don't do that anymore. But you don't go running around and broadcasting that as the president of the United States, because you were influencing huge generations of people.
Not only that, you're walking around and you're wearing it as if it's a badge of honor. Yeah. And it isn't. It isn't.
No.
Now switching gears really quick. And this has to do with, I don't know if most people probably have not heard of them, and that's the Black 14. What that is, the Black 14 was a group of football players that played for the Laramie Cowboys in Wyoming back in 1969. So for all you history buffs out there, that during that period of time, there was a lot of civil unrest when it came to civil rights that was going on. And what happened that day is the coach's name was Lloyd, and he had he was actually ahead of the curve, and I'll give him points for that. Because what he did is he was one of the first colleges that recruited black football players. He was one of the first because he simply wanted talent for his team.
So it was already a controversial action that he was doing, being ahead of the curve. He was doing something in the midst of a timestamp of history of America, of the civil rights movements. There was a lot of unrest. He was like, wait a minute. I'm looking at the athletic abilities of these individuals and giving them an academic opportunity and giving us the ability of getting a heck of a football team.
Right, and he had a couple of championship seasons. Right. So he went out and he convinced the school to offer scholarships to all of these black students who had an opportunity to go to Stanford, to go to SC, to go to UCLA.
Right.
They recruited all of these players. Now, because he was, keenly aware of the civil unrest that was going on at the time, he had a very strict no protest policy.
Right.
Now, what happened is one day, one of the black football players, there was 3 of them, went to approach him, and what they were going to ask him was, can we wear a black armband? That's all they wanted to do, was wear a black armband to show their solidarity and support of what was going on at the time in the black community.
Right.
They barely got the words uttered out of their mouth. He kicked all 14 of them off the team. And the community at first supported him because their feeling was, okay, we've given these kids these scholarships.
Right.
And then they're going to come in, they're going to protest. That's giving this college a black eye. So get out of here. Now, that ruined a lot of those young kids' lives, some not so much, because these were scholarships and these were kids from inner cities who couldn't afford to pay for college.
Right.
So some of them had to scramble. There were some businesses in the community that came together that helped pay for some of their college. But lo and behold, he lost that support because no team can sustain the loss of 14 critical players. So they had 2 or 3 losing seasons,
Right.
and then he was fired. They finally made amends with these 14 black players. Laramie called them to school, called them back to the college, gave them Letterman jackets, gave them their jerseys, and retired them. And issued a public apology. So I want to give kudos to them for taking that step because, especially in this day and age, with a lot of the attacks that are going on against minorities right now, it was so refreshing to read this story and hear how something that was done so wrong 50 years ago was made right.
Yeah, that's a fantastic story because, the attacks on people, just the attacks on human beings because of their external appearance that they have no control over is actually sickening.
It is.
Anymore. And we discussed that on one of the podcasts pertaining to the weaponizing of the word racism. And, I've constantly looked at that and myself, it's always turned my stomach. Real racism. What's going on now is, if everybody's a racist, then there is no racism. If everybody's a racist, because you and I both know clearly, vividly, what real racism is.
Absolutely.
And when you realize what real racism is, the pure hatred just for the external appearance of an individual, it's I can't even come up with a word.
It's palpable. It's palpable.
Yeah, it is disgusting. I mean, it's disgusting.
Now,
I can think of some real foul words to use.
Now, I want you to share a story because when you and I talked about this, the Black 14,
right?
You told me a story.
Well, Mel Gibson has the rights to a story of a Southern football, team that didn't have anybody to play at the time. So there was a particular, and this goes into, I believe it was the college. It was an all-American Indian football team.
Right.
And so they thought, it was way back in the, they didn't even have forward passing at the time.
Right.
Okay. And this American Indian football team, they agreed to play. And so they kicked the living crap out of this particular all-white football team, cowboy team basically,
right?
Because they were utilizing the forward pass, and they got so pissed off they actually killed all the players, all the Indian players. They just shot them all.
That is crazy.
People in the stands, they just you son of a bitches, killed them all because they beat the white people. And my comment to you was, white people could be pretty mean.
A little bit.
Slightly. But this is where it dives into looking at the 21st century's definition of racism versus what real racism is.
Right.
And it's an abomination. It is evil.
It is.
It is horrific. It should never be spoken about lightly in any particular way.
No.
I know when we did the podcast on that, one of the callers called in, and she thought I was being too cavalier about it when I was saying, look, I see you. I don't see a black man. I do see a black man. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
I see a black man. Of course, you're black. Okay? But I don't see you as a black man. I see you as a man, and I try to relate to you as a man, and I try to get your viewpoints.
Right.
Where do you come from? I remember my first time going to Manhattan. It was probably the most, I'm a people person. I think you figured that out, Ted.
Yeah.
I'm also a yapper. That's why I'm in politics. Okay?
Right.
When I went to Manhattan, it was so fascinating to see the multicultural community there, and I wanted to talk to everybody. It's like, wow, how'd you get here? What are you? Who are you? Where'd you come from? Right? It's fascinating to me. It's not intimidating. It's not, I don't see it as negative at all. I'm fascinated. I want to be a if I had the money, I'd be a world traveler.
Yeah, you want to find out
I
their
would go
story.
around and say, how do you do this? Because there's a group of Aboriginal grandmothers, it's called the 7 grandmothers, that go around the world, and they talk about the imbalance of the world because people no longer listen to the Aboriginals of the countries that have been there for centuries, thousands of years. How do they get along with each other? How do they get along with Mother Nature? How do they get along and preserve their lives? And this is where we're out of balance. So when we talk about racism, it's an out of balance of education and respect for the human being.
It is.
It's just a respect for the human being.
Yeah.
So on that note, I brought in a couple of subjects here. There was a Fox LA, .com, came out to a survey, and it says in the survey, to be happy in Los Angeles, you need to make an annual income of $204,855.
That's crazy.
And that's insane.
That's
Because
absolutely
that's
insane.
following San Francisco. You have to, in San Francisco, bring home $154,000. Bring home. Now, I don't know if this number is pre or after tax. Pre-tax income or after tax, take home net.
I don't know.
But at the same time, I do relate to it because I make a decent income. But 10 years ago, I was kind of living high on the hog. I made some great investments. I own a few houses and so forth. Right now, I'm making kind of the same income, a little more. But I'm broke, man, all the time.
Living up to the level of your means.
It's like, whoa, this is insane. I should have been fully retired by now, but I can't. I know I got to make some more, right? But this is, and also LA has become the most stressed city to live in the United States.
Right.
The highest stressed city in the U.S. to live in. So when you look at this, in order to be happy, you have to make $204,000. And we're wondering why Los Angeles has a massive homeless population.
Well, no, it's not just that. They broke it down a little bit further. What they also said is that you need to be making between $117,060 and $146,325 per year just for your emotional well-being. So you're not stressed out. I mean,
but this is what our politicians have done through policies, and they've destroyed it. Which ties into the next one. The next one I sent over to you. It's a study that 660 companies are moving their facilities out of California. Where? To the great state of Texas. And I've talked to businesses that moved to Texas, and their Chamber of Commerce will talk to people here, businesses here. They court them. I mean, I didn't even have to court my wife that hard. They court them. They tell them all the tax advantages. And once they get there in Texas, they decide to move to Texas. They sit there and they keep in tabs. They follow up. How can we help you? They work with them. They sit there and do everything possible to help them to succeed.
Well, not only that. Number one, the cost of living in Texas is a lot lower, and here's the crucial part: the cost of housing is a lot cheaper. Oh, you get outside of California, it drops down to the level of the carpet.
Oh, yeah.
So right there, you got the trifecta. You got the tax breaks. You have the cost of living, and
Right.
you have the cost of housing right there.
Right
That's your
now.
trifecta right there.
Yep. I had a buddy of mine who left, and he went over there. He brought his business to Texas, and I talked to him a couple of weeks ago, and he said flat out, "It's unbelievable out here." He goes, "The expendable cash that people have." He goes, "You don't even have to try hard to succeed in business anymore out here." He goes, "It's just unbelievable." He goes, "The sky's the limit."
Yeah,
You know,
and I bet you one of the things they probably don't have to worry about in Texas, because I think it's only California, maybe New York, is all these catalytic converters. I'm sure you probably don't have to worry about that in Texas.
Probably
as
not.
You do here. And you also
Well,
bear
forget
one
the
other
catalytic
thing.
converters. Remember what they did to the diesel trucks and diesel cars?
Right,
You had to
yeah.
put the scrubbers on there because
Right.
of the EPA and environmentalists and their conditions. I've got people right now that have perfectly good running trucks, clean, not smoking or anything,
Mm-hmm.
but they have to get rid of them now, and they can't afford to buy another truck.
It's just
Right?
crazy.
Tractors are the same thing. You have to have the what is the number 5 engine on the tractor anymore. My tractor I couldn't use commercially that I have on my ranch because it's one of the number 5 diesel engine, and it's a fine tractor. It doesn't work, it's not a problem at all. But in competition, if I took that tractor out to a job site, my competitor can call up and say he doesn't have a number 5 engine in that. The EPA would come
Right.
out, cite me for it, fine the living crap out of me, and I could not use that tractor again.
That's crazy.
It's insane of what's going on
with the rules, and I think that's something they complained about. I remember even back when Schwarzenegger was in office, and he complained about the amount of bureaucracy that it was in California. It was not a business friendly atmosphere.
Not at all.
You know, between the red tape of doing business,
I
handling
think we're
business,
the 48th worst state to do business in.
but everybody's trying to move here.
Yes. Well, they're trying to move here for
but
freebies.
not businesses, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the entitlement programs. Now, one more thing, and then we're going to go into what we're going to be doing next on the next shows.
Right.
The CBP over, the Customs and Border Patrol seized thousands of fake IDs headed from China to New York. Now, these are all different state driver's licenses. They're actually very legit looking. I mean, they're actually there. This is unbelievable. When you start looking at stuff like this coming from China, infiltrating here, and the businesses that we've talked about this before, the
Right.
businesses that are set up to bring mothers over here, pregnant women over here,
Right.
set them up in a hotel.
Right.
I'm sure this is all part of
I'm
it.
sure it
all the fancy documentation. This is why I think this administration is actually starting to seriously deal with issues that haven't been dealt with in 40 years. And it's gotten to the point now where another country can forge state driver's licenses in their country and they look perfect.
And that's scary.
That is extremely
That's
scary.
Scary.
And on that note, next week, we're going to have the 2 guests back, Kelly Brown, not Kelly Brown, God, my brain and I are going off, Sandy and Victoria
Right.
are coming back to talk about the California sex health,
And
HIV prevention, and gender assignment.
Right.
It's going to be a very, very revealing. We're going to have some of the pictures that actually show the curriculum, the pictures your kids are seeing from kindergarten up to 6th grade, and some of the pictures that will be using for explanation in 7th grade and in 9th grade. It's going to be an earth-shattering episode, so please tune in for that and watch it next Thursday at 7 o'clock. We have another episode that's going to be coming on. We just confirmed an unbelievable guest by the name of Rosemary Gibson that's going to come in and talk about China RX.
Right.
You can Google that. You can Google her name. She's written several books. She is a DC, kind of in a DC insider in a sense, lives in Virginia, but she is talking about China's takeover of our complete pharmaceutical manufacturing, and this is a major national security issue as far as I'm concerned. And I think the FDA is finally getting on board on it. A few of the congressmen and senators are getting on board with it. But this is where this Democrat majority House is not doing the business of the people. They're so caught up in this political BS anymore that they really need to start dealing with some of the real serious national security threats that we have that are ongoing. Because when America does not produce one drop of penicillin in all penicillin is produced in China.
That's a problem.
You've got to think about it.
Yeah, that's
On
a
that
problem.
note, I want to thank everybody for tuning in, watching our show, allowing us to come into your homes and your computers. And thank you once again. Ted, bring it on home.
Again, to echo Mark, thank you for tuning in to the show. Be sure to tune in next week for another exciting episode of The Voice of Reason. And remember, I can't believe I just forgot my tagline. Ignorance prevails when rational minds sit back and do nothing. Be sure to tune in next week.
Absolutely. There you go. Thank you.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Mark Reed and Ted Durden, only on LA Talk Radio.